Ready for an unforgettable journey through one of the most delightfully eccentric films of the 80s? Time Bandits, 1981, is packed with strange twists, surprising cameos, and a behind-the-scenes story as wild as the movie itself. Today, let's dive into a fresh retelling of its magic, from its childlike premise and big-name stars to the controversies and near-mythical deleted scenes. Buckle up, this is a time travel adventure like no other. 1. A child's point of view, and why dwarfs joined the heist. When director Terry Gilliam first envisioned Time Bandits, he wanted to capture the pure awe and wonder seen only through a child's eyes. In 1979, he drafted a screenplay featuring Kevin, a curious boy who stumbles upon a map that lets him and a gang of dwarfs travel through time. However, Gilliam worried a solo child lead might not hold the audience's attention over the course of a feature film. That's when the idea of adding a quirky band of dwarfs took center stage. These dwarfs weren't just sidekicks. Gilliam imagined them as mischievous time burglars, boldly snatching treasures from different eras. Their small stature paralleled Kevin's youthful perspective, making the whole story feel delightfully topsy-turvy. Suddenly, adult concerns seemed huge and intimidating, while the dwarfs themselves operated at kid level. This dynamic also let Gilliam explore comedic angles, such as the irony of pint-sized outlaws attempting grand-scale heists. At its core, Time Bandits reflects a child's love for adventure and lack of fear about bending the rules. When you're a kid, sneaking out after bedtime is a thrill, so imagine the adrenaline rush of warping into ancient Greece or Napoleonic battlefields to swipe crowns and jewels. By pairing Kevin with a ragtag crew of dwarfs, Gilliam infused the film with equal parts innocence and mischief, reminding us that real wonder often lies in the smallest details, and smallest heroes. 2. Sean Connery's unexpected, and delightful, role. Nobody expected Sean Connery, James Bond himself, to appear in a modestly budgeted fantasy film about time-traveling dwarfs. But Time Bandits pulled off a casting coup the moment Connery decided he couldn't resist the offbeat charm of the script. Originally, Gilliam wrote King Agamemnon as Sean Connery or an actor of similar grandeur but cheaper. Fate intervened when the script magically found its way into Connery's hands, and he was immediately intrigued. Connery's involvement went beyond simply playing the Greek king. He suggested a cameo as a firefighter in the film's final scenes, proving he was game for a little self-parody. He also proposed conjuring small magic tricks for Kevin, a whimsical touch that contrasted brilliantly with the actor's famously suave and authoritative persona. Why did he say yes? Possibly because Time Bandits wasn't your typical big studio epic. It was a playful, borderline subversive adventure that let Connery stretch his comedic muscles. He added a regal yet approachable air to the film, helping elevate its credibility and, surprisingly, appealing to a broader audience. Fans of the actor got to see a different side of their hero, one that's willing to poke fun at himself and bring a bit of old-world gravitas to an already eccentric story. 3. The infamous parent exploding ending. One of the most jaw-dropping moments in Time Bandits is the finale, where Kevin's parents literally blow up after touching a smoldering piece of evil left over from the final battle. You read that right, his mom and dad spontaneously combust, leaving young Kevin orphaned. It's a scene that still sparks debate today. Producer Dennis O'Brien was initially horrified, fearing it was too dark for a film that might attract children. He urged Terry Gilliam to tone it down. Gilliam, however, had a rebellious streak. He believed that a bold, even shocking ending fit perfectly with the film's off-kilter sense of humor. To test the waters, they held a screening with a younger audience, specifically gauging kids' reactions to that explosive twist. Much to everyone's surprise, the first child polled mentioned the parent blasting scene as a favorite. That gleeful response sealed its fate. No cuts would be made. This ending does more than just shock. It hints at Gilliam's Monty Python roots, where irreverence and the unexpected go hand in hand. Instead of coddling viewers, the film ends with a sardonic smirk, reminding us life can take bizarre turns. For Kevin, it's a bittersweet coming-of-age moment. He's free from dull, materialistic parents but left to navigate a world that's far stranger than he ever imagined. 4. Casting switches and near misses. Behind Time Bandits' success lies a flurry of near misses and last-minute casting changes. Initially, Jonathan Pryce was poised to play the evil genius, a role perfectly aligned with his theatrical flair. But Pryce had committed to filming Loophole, forcing him to pass. In his absence, producer Dennis O'Brien floated star-studded names like Burt Reynolds or Peter Sellers for the role of the Supreme Being, and even Art Carney for Winston the Ogre. If that sounds chaotic, it's because it was. The production needed actors who could handle comedic banter, carry the film's whimsical tone, and also deliver occasional moments of genuine gravity. Meanwhile, the beloved actress Ruth Gordon was all set to play Mrs. Ogre but had to withdraw after an injury, leaving that role scrambled at the last minute too. Yet such upheavals can yield unexpected magic. New faces brought fresh energy, aligning with Terry Gilliam's spontaneous style. He thrived on creative problem-solving, which sometimes meant rewriting scenes on the spot or incorporating actors' personal quirks. Perhaps Time Bandits is all the richer for these switcheroos. Every character, from cameo to co-lead, adds a distinct comedic beat. And while we can only imagine how Gordon or Pryce might have shaped certain moments, what we got is a lively, slightly chaotic cast that suits the film's delightfully ragged spirit. 5. The Sherwood Forest accident. When you're filming a group of time-traveling dwarfs crashing into medieval carriages in Sherwood Forest, what could possibly go wrong? As it turns out, quite a bit. Terry Gilliam designed an elaborate stunt. The diminutive thieves were to leap down from a scaffold, landing close, yet not on, Michael Palin and Shelley Duvall's moving carriage. Safety measures were put in place, and the actors rehearsed carefully. But Gilliam, determined to demonstrate the perfect angle of impact, decided to jump himself. Despite best intentions, he miscalculated his landing and crashed straight onto Shelley Duvall. Everyone on set froze in alarm. Thankfully, Duvall was more startled than injured, and the production continued. Still, it was a nerve-wracking reminder of how quickly comedic stunts can go awry. Ironically, this mishap embodies the spirit of Time Bandits, a whimsical, borderline manic approach to storytelling where unexpected collisions, both literal and figurative, drive the plot. Gilliam's hands-on style often brings a unique energy to the set, fostering camaraderie but also inviting real risk. The Sherwood Forest incident has become a bit of behind-the-scenes legend, symbolizing that line between practical joke and potential disaster. In the end, it's another story that underscores just how much chaos lies beneath the film's polished surface. 6. George Harrison's gamble that paid off. Handmade Films, co-founded by former Beatle George Harrison and his business partner Dennis O'Brien, became the unlikely savior of Time Bandits. Conventional studios found Gilliam's concept too risky. Dwarfs, a child lead, and a bizarre comedic tone didn't scream blockbuster. Determined to see this movie come to life, Harrison and O'Brien mortgaged their own Cadogan Square office building to raise $5 million, an enormous leap of faith. The stakes were high. Yet Harrison, already revered as a music legend, believed passionately in offbeat artistry. He had previously backed Monty Python's Life of Brian, another risky endeavor that ended triumphantly. In Time Bandits, he saw the same potential, a creative triumph waiting to happen if only someone would bankroll its quirkiness. That bet turned into box office gold, raking in over $40 million and proving both a commercial success and a critical darling. Reviewers applauded its inventive visuals and witty subversions of historical epics. The film's cult status continues to grow, and many credit Harrison's unwavering trust in Terry Gilliam's vision. Without the ex-Beatles' fearless investment, Time Bandits might never have left the drawing board. Today, it stands as a testament to how creative risks, taken by equally creative backers, can lead to cinematic magic. 7. When Kevin's Toys Come Alive. One of Time Bandits' most memorable showdowns is an epic confrontation against the evil genius, made all the more surreal by an army of toys turned real. Kevin's bedroom decor, ranging from cowboy figurines to Greek archer models, suddenly springs to life on a grand scale. Even the Lego bricks become enormous building blocks, forming a fortress of bizarre proportions. It's as if Kevin's imagination was physically unleashed onto the battlefield. This sequence is more than just visual flair. It speaks to the movie's central theme, a child's worldview, where playthings hold heroic potential and daydreams can conquer towering foes. Gilliam harnesses this kid logic to transform what could be a grim fight into a spectacle of pure, inventive glee. The final confrontation is an absurd mashup of historical eras, toy sets, and cartoonish booby traps that keep you laughing in astonishment. Beyond the entertainment value, there's a sentimental core. These toys symbolize Kevin's creativity and resilience. While the evil genius represents oppressive authority, Kevin's improvised toy soldiers highlight that youthful resourcefulness might just outsmart cosmic evil. It's a finale that appeals to the kid in all of us, reminding us how a boundless imagination can become the ultimate secret weapon, especially when time, space, and logic are up for grabs. 8. The power of low-angle shots. If you've ever felt like Time Bandits looks a bit different from typical fantasy films, that's partially thanks to Terry Gilliam's use of low-angle cinematography. By positioning the camera near the ground, he puts the audience at the dwarf's eye level. No longer are these characters comedic sidekicks dwarfed by normal-sized adults. Instead, we get a sense of epic scale from their vantage point. This approach also amplifies the film's sense of wonder and disorientation. Giant doors, sprawling landscapes, and towering figures loom overhead, making the world feel simultaneously grand and daunting. It's as if we're children again, gazing upward at everything that once seemed impossibly large. Low angles also accentuate comedic moments. Think about a band of tiny thieves craning their necks to address a historical conqueror or reeling back at the sight of monstrous beasts. Moreover, this choice cements the movie's child-focused perspective. Kevin is a young boy, but so are the dwarfs in their rebellious curiosity and impulsiveness. By shooting from a lower point, Gilliam reinforces that childlike sense of curiosity. Everything is bigger, stranger, and more thrilling. It's a subtle visual trick that shapes how we experience Time Bandits, not as adults looking down at small heroes, but as partners in their pint-sized escapades. 9. The sequel that never came. When a film earns cult classic status, talk of a sequel often bubbles up. Time Bandits was no exception. By 1996, Terry Gilliam and co-writer Charles Alverson had a draft script for a second installment. Rumor had it that most of the original dwarf cast would return for another dimension-hopping spree, with new historical settings and comedic misadventures lined up. Fans who adored the ragtag crew had good reason to cheer. But fate intervened. David Rappaport, Randall, and Tiny Ross, one of his pint-sized cohorts, passed away, leaving gaping holes in the ensemble. Jack Purvis, another key performer, suffered a severe accident that left him paralyzed. He passed away shortly thereafter. These tragedies shattered the foundation on which the sequel stood. The character arcs and comedic chemistry so vital to Time Bandits simply couldn't be replicated without these personalities. Amid this heartbreak, the sequel quietly vanished into development limbo. While fans still wonder what might have been, could a new band of time thieves emerge, Gilliam recognized that Time Bandits was a lightning-in-a-bottle moment. The loss of those beloved cast members felt too profound to overcome with a simple recast. To this day, the unmade sequel remains a bittersweet reminder of fragile success and the irreplaceable nature of certain creative sparks. 10. Craig Warnock's nerves around Sean Connery. Imagine being a child actor and discovering your co-star is Sean Connery, the man synonymous with James Bond. Craig Warnock lived that scenario firsthand, and the pressure was intense. On his very first day of shooting with Connery, Warnock struggled to stay in character. He would flub lines, giggle nervously, or go silent altogether. The towering presence of Hollywood royalty was overwhelming. Connery, aware of Warnock's jitters, suggested an unorthodox solution: film many of their close-up shots separately. He'd stand in for Warnock's line readings off-camera, and vice versa. Gradually, Warnock's confidence grew. Connery also offered friendly advice: how to project confidence, how to hit marks without overthinking. Slowly but surely, Warnock found his footing. By the time they filmed scenes face-to-face, Warnock felt more at ease, allowing for genuine chemistry between King Agamemnon and young Kevin. Decades later, Warnock would recall how Connery's gentle guidance made him feel comfortable, even in the spotlight. It's a touching glimpse into the supportive side of a legendary actor more often associated with suave bravado. For Warnock, that first experience on a movie set was as much about personal growth as it was about cinematic fantasy, proving that behind every hero lies a willing mentor. 11. Lost scenes that remain a mystery. Fans of Time Bandits have long speculated about the cut footage that never made it to theaters. The film's published screenplay reveals tantalizing hints of what might have been. Spider Women sequence, fully shot yet now considered lost, a poignant scene where Agamemnon gives Kevin a knife, and glimpses of bizarre, living tree hands in the time of legend. Even a planned bank heist in the 22nd century was on the table. Why were these scenes axed? Some say pacing, others blame budget constraints or the production's frantic schedule. Even more intriguing is the rumor that test audiences found certain scenes either too creepy or too confusing, prompting last-minute cuts. Regardless of the reasons, these missing moments have achieved almost mythical status among devotees. The Spider Women segment stands out as especially eerie. Reportedly, it involved monstrous half-human spiders luring the dwarfs into a perilous web. All that remains are still photographs and fleeting references in old production notes. The absence of these scenes feeds the film's cult mystique, inviting fans to imagine a darker, more outlandish cut of Time Bandits that possibly teetered on true horror. In a way, these elusive fragments only deepen the legend, making us wonder what other wonders or terrors might still be waiting in the editing room vault. 12. The Apple TV reboot controversy. Decades later, Time Bandits became the focus of a modern remake, led by Apple TV and featuring names like Lisa Kudrow and Taika Waititi. But original director Terry Gilliam wasn't impressed. He voiced disappointment that the new project apparently shifted away from casting dwarfs in key roles, a core element of the 1981 film that had provided rare high-profile opportunities for little people. For Gilliam, the dwarfs were never just a gimmick, they were essential to the story's worldview. Time Bandits gave short-stature actors a spotlight to be action heroes, rather than relegating them to novelty roles. Losing that emphasis, he argued, misses part of the film's inclusive spirit. Complicating matters is the fact that Gilliam doesn't hold creative control anymore, having lost the rights after Handmade Films was sold. As social media buzzed, fans debated whether the remake would capture the quirky charm that made the original so beloved, or if it might dilute the film's eccentric DNA. Gilliam's complaint reignited discussions on representation. Does updating a classic have to mean sidelining the very people it once championed? While it's unclear how Apple's take will ultimately unfold, the controversy itself highlights how Time Bandits remains fiercely cherished by both creator and fans alike. 13. Training a horse to leap from a wardrobe. An unforgettable moment in Time Bandits occurs when a horse dramatically bursts from what appears to be an ordinary closet. Pulling off that brief shot took weeks of meticulous preparation, and no small dose of animal psychology. Horses are easily spooked by tight spaces, bright lights, and loud noises. The production team had to gradually acclimate their equine star to stepping into, and eventually galloping out of, a specially designed wardrobe set. First, the handlers spent days calming the horse, letting it sniff and explore a makeshift wardrobe in an open area. Then they introduced camera lights, clapperboards, and other typical set noises so the horse wouldn't panic on the actual shoot day. Practicing the jump had to be done incrementally, ensuring the animal felt comfortable accelerating from an enclosed space into an open set. The final shot is over in seconds, yet it adds an exhilarating dose of surreal humor to the film's tapestry of oddities. It encapsulates what Time Bandits does best: blend the whimsical and the nearly impossible into one fluid moment that feels both absurd and captivating. Viewers might laugh or gasp, but either way, it's a testament to how Gilliam and his crew would stop at nothing, yes, even training a horse to jump out of a cupboard, to realize their wildest visual ideas. 14. George Harrison's Dream Away, a compromise with music. Terry Gilliam wanted Time Bandits to rely primarily on a traditional score, imagining the film's timeless atmosphere would resonate better without contemporary songs. But when your executive producer is George Harrison, iconic Beatle, hitmaker, and the man who partly funded your film, negotiations shift. Harrison insisted on including his own track, Dream Away, in the end credits, gently reminding Gilliam that Time Bandits wouldn't exist without his financial backing. Initially, Gilliam resisted. He worried that a modern pop tune would undercut the timeless fantasy vibe he was cultivating. Yet Harrison's point was compelling. This wasn't just a vanity insertion, it was an extension of the creative partnership they'd already fostered on Life of Brian. Ultimately, Gilliam conceded, and Dream Away plays as the credits roll, a melodic sign-off that blends whimsical escapism with a soft rock groove. In hindsight, the compromise feels fitting. It's almost a final wink at the audience. After traversing ancient mythologies, Napoleonic wars, and cosmic showdowns, we land in the gentle embrace of a modern-day lullaby. The tune underscores the childlike curiosity that propelled Kevin's journey. And while it might have been a business-driven decision, Dream Away has become part of the film's DNA, symbolizing the unique fusion of cinematic vision and legendary musical collaboration. 15. Why Mrs. Ogre looks so human. In a film filled with bizarre creatures, you might expect an ogre's wife to be equally monstrous. But actress Katherine Helmond, who portrayed Mrs. Ogre, had other ideas. She proposed keeping her character looking almost entirely human, both to maintain her own comfort, extensive prosthetics can be a nightmare, and to highlight a comedic contrast with her bulky, beastly husband. This choice became an unexpected stroke of genius. Having one ogre remain grotesque while the other appears more or less normal sparks instant visual comedy. It's an odd couple dynamic that adds a fresh layer of personality to the film, the bride of a hulking, sea-worn ogre fussing over domestic details, as if living in a rundown fortress were the most normal thing in the world. On a deeper level, Helmond's approach also reflects Time Bandits' penchant for turning expectations upside down. Instead of a matching pair of man-eating monsters, we have a loving but comically mismatched duo. The humor arises from that wild contrast, and the message might be that appearances can be deceiving. Even in Gilliam's topsy-turvy universe, you find pockets of genuine tenderness. Mrs. Ogre's human face stands out as both a creative decision and a subtle nudge to look beyond the surface. 16. David Rappaport's method acting challenges. David Rappaport, who portrayed the dwarf self-appointed leader Randall, believed wholeheartedly that he'd been cast for his acting prowess rather than just his stature. Determined to prove it, he took a method acting approach, staying in character on and off camera. While this level of dedication often garners respect, it sometimes created awkward tension among the ensemble. Other cast members found Rappaport's intensity somewhat isolating, especially since Time Bandits leans heavily into comedic and chaotic elements. Rumor has it that the scene in which Randall and the other dwarfs run into an invisible barrier, prompting a rebellious standoff, mirrored real backstage frustrations. Terry Gilliam acknowledged that Rappaport's seriousness could clash with the film's light-hearted vibe. Yet there's no denying that Rappaport's portrayal of Randall added a crucial dynamic. He's cunning, ambitious, but also vulnerable, and that emotional range adds depth to a character who could have easily been a one-note jokester. In the end, Rappaport's method approach may have strained some on-set relationships, but it left an indelible mark on the final product. His commanding presence makes Randall genuinely compelling, driving the dwarf's escapades forward with an almost manic determination. It's a perfect illustration of how creative friction can produce memorable, if occasionally tense, artistry. 17. The Evil Genius's headpiece. Inspired by Alien, when designing the evil genius, Gilliam wanted him to exude a sinister vibe that contrasted sharply with the film's whimsical sets and costumes. Enter the towering headpiece, bristling with spikes, cables, and odd protrusions, a look inspired by the biomechanical nightmares of H.R. Giger's Alien designs. While Alien and Time Bandits couldn't be more different tonally, Gilliam admired Giger's ability to merge the organic with the technological. The result is a villain who seems plucked from a darker dimension entirely. Surrounded by comedic dwarfs and historical hijinks, the evil genius's metallic, somewhat insectoid headgear immediately signals danger. Fans of sci-fi will notice the Giger-like curvature and menacing angles, which evoke a hint of horror that feels out of place, and that's precisely the point. The headpiece underscores the evil genius's narcissistic drive for superiority. In a film where knights, giants, and ancient warriors are the norm, this advanced, almost alien aesthetic makes him feel unstoppable. It's a fusion of fantasy and eerie futurism, suggesting a threat that transcends ordinary mortal boundaries. By borrowing cues from one of cinema's greatest horror designers, Gilliam gave Time Bandits an antagonist whose look lingers in your mind, bridging the gap between absurd comedy and genuine menace. 18. The Monty Python connection. If you've ever detected a Monty Python flavor in Time Bandits, you're not alone. Terry Gilliam and Michael Palin hail from that legendary comedy troupe, and John Cleese also makes a cameo as Robin Hood. Beyond that, scholar Robert Hewison posited that each dwarf might symbolize a member of Monty Python, Fidget representing Michael Palin, Randall as John Cleese, Strutter for Eric Idle, OG for Graham Chapman, Wally for Terry Jones, and Vermin for Terry Gilliam himself. Fans of Python's irreverent, boundary-pushing humor will see parallels throughout Time Bandits, slapstick gags, sudden tonal shifts, and a playful irreverence for historical icons. Indeed, the dwarfs' petty bickering and comedic flubs echo Python's famed sketches where pompous authority always gets deflated. There's even a dash of that Monty Python absurdity in how random historical figures keep popping up without any reverence for chronology. Though Time Bandits stands on its own, it's clearly fueled by that Python spirit of anarchy and wit. The dwarfs function almost like a mini Python ensemble, each representing a different comedic angle. This unspoken synergy helps transform Time Bandits from a straightforward kid-centric fantasy into a subtle comedic tapestry, bridging the gap between the whimsical innocence of children's adventures and Python's signature brand of satire. 19. Ian Holm, a Napoleon out of time. Ian Holm delivers a comically unhinged portrayal of Napoleon Bonaparte, who appears in the film as a diminutive tyrant obsessing over little things and puppet shows. At the time, Holm was 49 years old, whereas the historical Napoleon was only 26 during the depicted era. Rather than letting that discrepancy be a drawback, the film leans into it with playful gusto. Holm's Napoleon is as much a caricature as he is a cameo of historical fanfare. Gilliam spotlights the emperor's reputed insecurity about his short stature, injecting comedic irony by placing him among dwarfs. True to Time Bandits' form, the script emphasizes buffoonish traits. This Napoleon fixates on trivial entertainments, showcasing an almost childlike glee whenever he encounters anything smaller than himself. Yet Holmes' commitment grants depth to what could have been a one-note spoof. He manages to capture an uneasy mix of entitlement and petulance, making Napoleon both funny and slightly pathetic. It's another example of Time Bandits twisting historical grandeur into comedic absurdity, reminding us that even the most fearsome conquerors might be undone by their own vanity. Holmes' performance stands out as a delightful highlight, a cameo that merges historical satire with comedic brilliance, leaving audiences both chuckling and cringing in equal measure. 20. The Star Wars alumni connection. Kenny Baker, known worldwide for bringing R2-D2 to life in Star Wars, appears in Time Bandits as Fidget, the sweet-natured dwarf who's often caught in the middle of chaos. But he wasn't the only intergalactic traveler on set. Malcolm Dixon, Mike Edmonds, and Jack Purvis, all of whom portrayed various small-statured characters in Star Wars, including Ewoks, joined in on the time-hopping capers. Casting them wasn't merely a fun coincidence. Hollywood has historically offered limited opportunities for little people, and these actors had already gained notoriety for their work in major sci-fi spectacles. Terry Gilliam saw their experience with costumes, stunts, and physical comedy as a perfect fit for Time Bandits' demands. Indeed, the camaraderie they'd fostered in Star Wars carried over, allowing them to seamlessly create the roguish dynamic of a band of thieves scuttling through history. Their presence is a subtle Easter egg for fans who recognize those faces from a galaxy far, far away. It underscores a shared lineage of cult cinema, bridging George Lucas's iconic saga with Gilliam's surreal comedic adventure. In Time Bandits, these Star Wars alumni prove their versatility, shifting from cosmic droids and furry rebels to mischief-making time bandits, reminding us that a great performer can effortlessly switch universes, whether it's spacecraft or medieval ships sailing across the seas of time. And there you have it, Time Bandits in all its weird and wonderful glory. If you found this rundown intriguing, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with fellow movie buffs who love exploring cinematic oddities, and stay tuned for more adventures into the hidden corners of film history.